The human race is inherently curious about a few basic things: the meaning of life, where we came from, what happens when we die, and if we are the only intelligent life form in the universe. For that last one, I don't believe we are. There is too much evidence saying that there is someone else out there, and furthermore, there is too much space to suggest that we are the only inhabitants. I'm going to walk you through some ancient cultures and their possible ties to alien involvement, and then I'm going to present what I consider to be the top 3 most compelling modern alien encounters. And finally, I will present a modern mathematical take on the issue that should, for good, answer the question, are we alone in the universe? When addressing the mystery of ancient cultures, I like to point to the world grid, or a map of the Earth's magnetic field. Where the lines on the grid intersect, there seems to be a pattern of megalithic structures. We have the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge in the northern British Isles, Mohenjo-Daro, Siam pyramids, Angkor Wat, and Easter Island. And that's just to name a few. Is it possible that ancient people knew about the world grid and understood the Earth's magnetic field? And if so, how? This phenomenon suggests that many ancient cultures somehow knew the Earth from an aerial point of view, and they knew this without having any evidence that shows us they had the technology to fly. These structures alone are a scientific anomaly. Let's look at the first point on the grid, the pyramids of Giza. We don't exactly know how they cut, carved, and moved the enormous blocks from the excavation site miles away from the location of the pyramid. And once they tapped the blocks to the building site, how did the Egyptians lift and put the blocks in place with such precision? They either had technology that we can't even dream of, which means that we have actually severely underestimated the ability of ancient people, or they had some sort of outside help. Both of these theories point to the possibility of extraterrestrial involvement. But that's just the outside of these structures. What's on the inside? Many ancient cultures have also produced a number of artifacts that seem to allude to the idea of sky people. One in particular is the Quimbaya airplane. These plane-like artifacts were found in Colombia, and they date back as far as 1000 BC. What makes them special is they are aerodynamically accurate, meaning they can fly. This means there was mechanical flight 2 to 3,000 years before the Wright brothers invented it. If that's not saying something, I don't know what is. There's also a lot of religious text and art that depicts aliens. The prophet Elijah from the Old Testament is said to have ascended into the sky on a chariot of fire caught in a whirlwind. Kind of seems like a UFO. Ancient Sanskrit text, the Drona Parva, tells a story of gods having a dogfight in the sky with flying machines known as vimanas. What are they? The Sumerians believed that they were actually created by an alien race called the Anunnaki. In the painting, Madonna and Child, from the Renaissance period, there's an object in the sky in the background behind the Madonna's head. Do you see it back there? Right there. There's also a beam of light shining from it that's very hard to see, and a person down here. See him right there at the bottom? He's looking up at the thing in the sky, acknowledging that it is there. What do you think that is? UFO sightings and beliefs don't stop with ancient cultures. It's a phenomenon that continues to this day, with a number of sightings, encounters, and abductions being reported worldwide. 3 encounters that seem to have irrefutable evidence to me are the Battle of LA, the Roswell incident, and the classic JAL 1628 encounter. The Battle of LA happened on February 25th, 1942, when a number of LA citizens saw an unidentified flying object in the sky above LA. They sent the Army, and it was the Army's 37th Coast Guard or Coast Artillery Brigade, and they started to light up the sky. They started a firing brigade that lasted for more than 30 minutes, and they hit their target. But it didn't seem to be damaged. After 30 minutes, the object simply flew away. Later, the object was said to have been mistaken for a weather balloon, which is not believable because what kind of weather balloon survives a 30-minute firing brigade? These are professionals. They know how to hit their target. There's no way they were missing. The second is the Roswell incident, and many say that 1947, when the Roswell incident happened, is the beginning of the UFO era, and I believe it's because this incident is so believable. There's an FBI memo that you can find in my works cited that states what happened. There's no way this is false information, but what happened was in the first week of July 1947. An identified flying object crashes near Roswell, New Mexico, and a rancher finds the wreckage and reports it. And as soon as the authorities get there, of course, they block it off and no one else is allowed on the scene. The government issues a memo, like I said prior, and it states the following facts. Debris is from 3 crafts that were identified in the wreckage. 3, not just 1. And there were bodies found among the wreckage as well. But later, the headlines and statements that had called the crash a flying disc had been rescinded. The incident, just like at the Battle of LA, had been chalked up to be a mistaken weather balloon. This is the second time we've heard this excuse, and it's still not believable. The third is the classic JAL 1628 encounter. This happened on November 17th, 1986. There was an airplane flying from Paris to Tokyo, and as they were flying over Alaska, the pilot saw lights below and beside the plane. All of a sudden, they were in front of the plane, and he could identify 2 different crafts. The crafts rapidly moved to a side-by-side formation, and this is a movement that happened so rapidly that there was no way this was made by a modern aircraft. These unidentified crafts did show up on both aircraft and ground radar, and the Anchorage Air Traffic Control stayed in contact with the plane for a half an hour while it navigated away from the craft. I think all of this surrounding this sighting says that it is actually a UFO sighting. Stuff doesn't come up on radar that is nothing. But if ancient mysteries and modern sightings are not enough to convince you that we are not alone in the universe, maybe math will. Think about the probability that we are the only intelligent life in our universe or even our galaxy. We are in the Milky Way galaxy, and according to this compelling video that I found on YouTube that I fact-checked on Wikipedia and NASA.gov, there are anywhere between 200 and 400 billion stars in the Milky Way. 90% of those are old enough and small enough to have planets in their orbit. 10% of those are formed of sustainable elements to support an Earth-like environment, and 2% of those will orbit within their star's habitable zone. According to the numbers found in the video, that would leave us with 100 million Earth-like planets in our galaxy alone. NASA said that number is more like 10 billion. One way you can get to these numbers is using the Drake equation. The Drake equation is an equation that Dr. Frank Drake came up with that allows us to make an estimate by multiplying 7 quantities related to the prevalence of life. In other words, it is a generator that gives us the probability of other communicative civilizations in the Milky Way. When I put in the numbers from the YouTube video into the equation, and remember, those numbers are smaller than the ones from NASA, the answer yields an estimation of at least 40 quadrillion civilizations in the Milky Way. Yes, that is a real number, 40 quadrillion. Let me show you how I got there. And the equation asks for the number of stars in our galaxy, so that's 200 billion. I took the zeros away and I just put 200 on here. I'll add the zeros later when we get down here, and I'll show you how I did that. Next is the percentage of those stars that have planets. That would be 90%, as I said earlier. And then 10% of those are Earth-like, which leaves us 18 billion. And then the next 3 are sort of guesses from you, from the person using the equation. How many of those Earth-like planets would have life? I said half. Let's say half has it. And then next, number of those that might have intelligent life. Not just life, but intelligent life. So let's say half of the planets that have life also have intelligent life. And then half of those planets with intelligent life have communicative intelligent life. And then it asks you, well, how many years do you think that intelligent civilization, communicative civilization has been around? And I said at least 1,000 years, right? And so you put that onto the equation and it yields 40 quadrillion. It's a big number. 40 quadrillion civilizations. Now that means multiple civilizations per planet, but that shows us the likelihood that there is at least somebody else out there. So do you still think we are alone? In closing, there are too many factors in human history that point to the existence of otherworldly life forms, and modern science continues to open up more and more possibilities for us every day. It's too many possibilities for us to say we are alone in the universe, for sure. Earth is one of many, many Earth-like planets in our galaxy alone, and for us to assume that we are an unique anomaly is simply unjustifiable, and in my opinion can hinder our ability to advance as a civilization. We must open our mind to the possibilities and let them wander. I leave you with this quote from physicist and author of 2001: A Space Odyssey, Arthur C. Clarke. The idea that we are the only intelligent creatures in a cosmos of 100 billion galaxies is so preposterous that there are very few astronomers today who would take it seriously. It is safest to assume, therefore, that they are out there, and to consider the manner in which this may impinge upon human society.